Hello, and welcome to episode 36 of the Time to Calibrate podcast. I'm Marc Levesque. Joining me today is Bob Allaby from the Time to Go Travel and Timepieces YouTube channel. Unfortunately, Brent can't be with us. He's currently doing his traveling in home renewals, so he can't be with us. Our special guest today is none other than Roland Murphy from RGM Watches, one of America's top watchmakers and a personal friend. We go way back to the days when the internet was in its infancy. Welcome to the show, Roland.
Oh, glad to be here, Mark. Thanks for asking me.
No problem.
Good to have you, for sure.
As per the laws of watch-related podcasting, we must start with a wrist check. What's on your wrist, Roland?
On my wrist is the 80140 Classic Enamel.
Nice.
That's become my current everyday watch.
Very cool. Is that the one? Does it have blued hands too?
It does. Yeah.
Yeah, I can almost see them glint when you turn your wrist over. That was really cool.
Yeah.
Steel hands, enamel dial, our 801 movement, and this is the smallest case we have for the 801 now at 40.3 millimeters.
That must really look cool with the movement fit in the entire case on the back.
Exactly. It's all movement when you turn it over.
That's awesome. Bob, what do you got on?
Well, I had to wear one of your company Isotopes watches today. I haven't worn the Mercury for a while, so I decided to slap that on for the afternoon and evening.
Very cool. That's the Mercury Shadow, right?
Yeah.
Very cool.
One of my favorites.
While I was at the Austin show, I got to hang out with Chris from poppingcrowns.com, and he was working for Bettina, who runs the company called Moles and Company. And they've loaned me a watch so that we can review it. It is the 369 with the silver dial and polished hands and numerals. Really comfortable watch. And after I'm done writing about it, I'm sending it to you, Bob, so you can do some pictures and possibly a video. And then the review will show up on the Calibrated Wrist at some point soon. So it's a very cool watch. Been very accurate. I think she's onto something there with the integrated bracelet. It's not like the others, even though it's still an integrated bracelet to try to be like the others, but it's special, really special.
She's this lady that started this brand, Roland, by the way, I think she's only like 22 or 23.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Somewhere around there. Yeah, she's doing some really cool stuff.
Just a baby.
Yeah. But she's got an eye for design and very good, keen sense of attention to detail, which is rare. And it's little things you'll see, Bob, when you see this with the screwed links, the bracelet, the clasp that has the micro adjust properly. It has a really cool non-display display back. You'll see what I mean when you get your hands on it. The crown is different. It winds in really good, screws in nice. No, a lot of attention to detail here for such a young brand. It's very cool. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with Mr. Murphy, here's a brief bio. Get ready, Roland. This is your life. Roland's journey into horology began in Maryland, more specifically in the wood shops and clock factories of his youth. As he himself recounts, his early interest in cabinet making and grandfather clocks morphed into a fascination with the movements inside the timekeepers. He formalized his training at Bowman Technical School in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and then traveled to Switzerland in 1986 to attend the prestigious WOSTEP, Watchmakers of Switzerland Training and Education Program. From there, he returned to the U.S. to work with Hamilton Company and product development and technical management, gained valuable experience with the big watch industry. And then in 1992, Roland struck out on his own and founded RGM Watch Company in Mount Joy, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, a region steeped in American watchmaking history. His aim to bring authentic in-house mechanical watchmaking back to the U.S., blending traditional craftsmanship with modern precision. Over the years, his team has engineered, crafted, and finished unique movements, including the Caliber 801, which Roland mentioned in the watch he's wearing today, the Caliber 20, and even an American-made tourbillon, almost entirely in-house, which is a rare feat outside of Switzerland. For Roland, it's not about being a watch brand to the masses, but to be a watchmaker, a creator of something lasting, something with soul. He situates his work within an American horological legacy, rooted in a golden era of U.S. watchmaking, yet very much modern, independent story. But Roland's influence doesn't stop at the bench. He was also a pioneer in the early internet watch community, launching equationoftime.com, one of the first forums with collectors enthusiasts could discuss timepieces online. This was well before social media and Reddit reshaped the space. It was the home of the Ultimate Dive Watch Forum, which I founded, and served as the inspiration of WatchUseek's own Dive Watch Forum. For Roland, American Made isn't just a tagline, but a deeply held ethos, and he keeps designs, craftsmanship, and the human scale workshop at the core of everything RGM does. How's that sound?
It was great. All right, guys, have a good night.
I was going to ask if I missed anything.
What else is there to say?
Oh man, I remember those days on Equation of Time. It was a lot of fun. It was a small community, but we had a lot of fun, and that Dive Watch Forum really, really kicked off some really cool memories for me.
Yeah, that really helps.
Yeah,
but we didn't give the Equation of Time, the love it would have needed to to thrive more than it did. But kind of left on its own, it did pretty good.
It did very well for quite a while. I think the Dive Watch Forum that I'd started on my own had grown out of control for me to hold myself. I had gone on vacation and came back to it, and it was a giant mess. And you had a gentleman by the name of Richard Bow that worked for you.
Well, it's pronounced Ball, but it's spelled Baugh.
Yeah. Who was working some of your digital programming and digital marketing and stuff, and he was also a graphic designer, I believe, for you. Did some dials and some other designs. So he stepped in and helped me out, and we merged that forum onto Equation of Time, and then from there it was we had games on there, we designed watches together, we did all kinds of cool stuff.
It was fun. It was fun. The time was different then. The internet was different. You really couldn't do that here today. But
no, you couldn't.
Definitely was a time. It's kind of funny because I don't think of that much time having been passed, but it is, and I started that forum in 1998.
That's right.
And it doesn't seem in my mind that long ago, but it really is. And then when Time Zone had some issues, we gained a whole bunch of followers. And then there was kind of like a feud over there or something. We gained a bunch of followers, and we were at a point where it could really have taken off. But that gentleman from Colorado, I don't even remember his
Terry
name.
Allison.
He started a forum, and then I had all these people, and then some of them just started to disappear. And then I found out later, after it was too late, basically he was offering them like part ownership in the site, and that they were going to get the proceeds of some of the deals he was making. Of course, that never happened.
Actually, I was one of those people that I was proud. Yes, I was.
You know better than I do, actually. I just find that secondhand. I'm like, well, that's what happened.
He offered us the stars and the moon, and I was the main forum moderator there for a while, and we grew that place again because of, I think, Time Zone had gotten purchased by Ashford.com at the time, and there was some rifts as to what they were going to do, the content that we generated. And so when it was sold to timebeat.com, we did get stock options for that 60,000 shares, but they were penny shares, and they never even came close to the strike price. So we couldn't cash those in for anything. I mean, it was just a waste of time. And then that guy lost his marbles, Terry Allison. He literally jumped off the deep end, and it was, and we found out afterwards, after the fact, that he was some of the trolls that were on that site that were generating traffic. And he was, he had like 7 or 8 accounts that were generating a lot of action in there.
What site?
That was watchzone.net.
Oh, watchzone.net.
He would come over on our site. And
yes, he would.
Stuff. And
he was such a character.
He did I probably even shouldn't talk about this stuff, but he did a review on RGM anonymously on some site, a real negative one.
Oh my God.
And it was crazy, but and then Ashford bought Time Zone. Richard Page and I did, we did the Time Zone walk.
Yep.
And Richard was easy to work with. We did a good time.
We had him on the podcast.
Ashford came on. They tried to, be authorized for everybody under the sun. And, we did kind of a deal with them, an initial one, but, we won't get into that, but it didn't work out.
All right.
Didn't work out probably for the best though.
Yeah.
But we said, what happened, when we were in the 2000s for RGM, we were trying to do the traditional sales of a watch brand. You sell to a jeweler, the jeweler sells to the customer. And the problem is that in this country, trying to do that as a small brand just didn't work because you were not treated the same way as the larger brands. So stores would take advantage of you. And I won't mention any store names, but there was one particular store in New York, don't mention the name. And I would leave some pieces on consignment and this and that. And I would actually have to visit them, do an inventory to get paid because when they would sell something, they wouldn't just pay you and send you the money. They wouldn't pay you until I would visit. So I only went up there a handful of times a year. I'm like, oh, where's this watch? Oh, it sold yesterday.
Oh yeah,
Everything
sure.
was
Yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have a chance to. Okay, and then there was stores in California and a few other places where I would put in an ad in a watch magazine. A person would call me from the ad, and we'd have a great conversation, talk about the watch. And I'd say, yeah, go over to XY store, and when they have a few of our pieces there, you can check the watch out. It's there. Okay. So I did that a few times, and a few times people would call me back and say, hey, I went over to that store last week you told me about. And unfortunately, I never even got to see the watch. I'm like, wow. Oh, because as soon as I went in, they wanted to show me this, they wanted to show me that, wanted to show me that. And what it was is I didn't realize that these big brands and groups would do these like spiffs and stuff. So basically they go into the store and say, if you to the store would have offerings, and then to individual salesmen. So they go to the salesman and say, hey, if you sold 10 of our brand in the next 10 watches in the next 45 days, we're going to give you $1,000, which 20 years ago or whatever, that was $1,000, that was pretty good. So what happened is these people, the salespeople had an incentive to sell you something else.
Yeah.
Even though I paid for the ad, found the customer and sent the customer to their store, they're trying to sell him. This happened 2 or 3 times in a 3-month period. And being the sole owner of RGM, I don't have to ask anybody's permission to do anything. So just one day after like the 3rd time this happened, I got off the phone. I said, I'm not doing anything. I'm done. I basically pulled everything out of stores they were in. And that day I went direct sales. I changed how we did everything. And there was one store that I knew had some pieces on consignment, and I knew if I asked for them back, that would be difficult to, well, why? What? But so there was another store I was doing a watch event at in Massachusetts, where I was going to go up, take extra watches and this and that. So I still was going to do that event where they had different brands in, invite their best guys. So I still going to do that. So I told the other store, I said, listen, I'm going to Massachusetts. I'm doing this weekend event. I want because they had a couple watches that they owned that they bought from us, and then the rest were consignment. So I said, I need the consignment watches. I'm taking them to Massachusetts for the weekend. So I got the watches back. I did the event. And then the following week, I let them know that, I had changed how we're going to sell watches, and that we were no longer going to do consignment, and that we were no longer going to be selling new watches through jewelers. And of course, they got all upset. And to this day, that one individual won't speak to me.
Oh, wow.
But I had to do what I had to do because these are the same people that wouldn't pay me unless I went up there and did an inventory.
Yeah,
These are, they were lying to me all the time. So I knew I was beating my head against the wall because, they do business with you if they could, but they weren't going to give you a good spot in the store. They weren't going to really promote you. You didn't mean much to them other than maybe they get a few extra sales and hold on to your money longer than they should. So I knew I had to get out. So as soon as we went direct sales, sales picked up, even though people couldn't go to stores and see them. We sold more watches. Who knows my watch is better than I do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're talking to somebody that knows what they're talking
Yeah.
about. Most watch collectors know more than the salesman.
That is 100% true.
And so the sales picked up. We sold more watches. We didn't have any more built-in margins. So I adjusted the pricing, and I told everybody. Then the biggest plus was getting rid of, how much, what can you sell it for, what's the discount. I got rid of all that. I said, you know what? We're going to sell everything at the real price.
Yeah.
And I'll tell them, this is the real price. Everybody pays the real price. And there's no more margins in there to just, play with.
Yeah,
so there's no dealer margin. There is no distributor margin. So, you get the same price as everybody else, and it's at the real price. And that's why we don't have to talk about a discount. And there's nothing worse than having a great conversation, trying to sell somebody something that they want, and you enjoy dealing with them. And at the end, then you're negotiating a price.
Yeah.
That's, nobody wants to do. So I got rid of that. And ever since, if you look across our line, we offer the most at every price. That's what people say. How do you compare your watch to the other one? I offer the most watch at every price point. So, where are you going to find, for instance, the watch that I'm wearing, where are you going to find an in-house movement with a real Grand Fure fired enamel dial, blue steel hands, hand-built exclusive caliber. And I think this watch is presently in the $15,000 price range. There isn't anything that's comparable.
Yeah.
So, and even if you come down the line to the 151 Pilot 3250, you have it currently has a Salida automatic, but has an American-made case that we make here in Pennsylvania, Sapphire. If you compare it, there's nothing in that price range made the way that our watches are made.
Absolutely. I agree with you about the negotiating part. Every time you do enter a negotiation, someone always comes out of it unhappy. Either you didn't get enough for it, or he paid too much for it, and no one's satisfied in the end. Whereas if you price it accurately, you price it properly, fairly, everyone's happy. That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
So, Roland, you trained at the Woman Technical School in Pennsylvania, and then WOSTEP, as I mentioned earlier. How did those schools differ? How did those experiences shape your philosophy of watchmaking?
Well, at Bowman's is where I kind of realized I preferred watchmaking over clockmaking. Because in the course, I went in the clock course, but in the clock course, because some clocks, like little carriage clocks, have a platform escapement.
Okay.
And they're not that common that you'd have students working on carriage clocks, you know what I mean? So that we were well-rounded, they taught us to repair pocket watches. And then we would know how to handle the escapement, the balance, the staff, and everything that we would need to do. So we were doing many of the things that the watch course was doing with pocket watches. And that's when I really realized I preferred mechanical watches. And that really was a defining moment on the direction I was going to go. So then, of course, after Bowman's, I went to WOSTEP in Neuchâtel, Switzerland. And that was a great experience because I got to see the industry a bit, because we did tours. So we would, we do a tour at Longines. We did a tour at places that made jewels or made other things. So I kind of gave me a glimpse into the industry, because we every so often we would have a tour to one of these places. And then, of course, just sitting down and learning to approach wristwatches and modern movements, vintage movements, antique movements. So that was a great experience. Then when I came back from there, Hamilton was still in Lancaster, assembling and developing watches, servicing watches. So I thought, well, I had all this training, maybe I can get a job in the service center. Maybe helping to manage an area or something. I had a lot of experience and training from the two schools and what I was doing on my own. So I went over there, but at the time they still had the remnants of the union
Yep.
that was in place from back when they were, a big manufacturer. So they said, "Oh, everything looks great, everything is," but the problem is, we'd have to start you in the mailroom. And I'm like, mailroom? I'm not gonna work in the mailroom. You know what I mean? They said, "Well, we're sorry." So then, I was very disappointed to find out that wasn't going to work out there. So I was sitting around, I think, a week or so later, during the day, watching, one of those daytime soap operas or something. I had nothing to do. And I got a phone call from the head of personnel there. And he said, "Hey, I was thinking about you." He said, "An opening just came across my desk that might interest you." And I said, "Well, what is it?" He says, "Well, he says product development is looking for somebody, and that is a management job. So, union doesn't apply. Would you like to come in and apply for the job and do a interview with the vice president of product development?" Absolutely. So we set that up. A couple days later, I was in there. I sat down and did the interview, talked about my schooling, what I do. They told me what they do in product development. It was a pretty small department at Hamilton. And, a few days later, I heard I got the job, and I was there for about 5 years.
Oh, very cool. And once you did the whole thing at Hamilton, you decided to launch in '92 to start your own brand, long before independent watchmaking was a buzzword.
Yes, there weren't that many.
No, what motivated you to go out and go out on your own?
Well, Hamilton was a good learning experience on the industry. I kind of learned. I knew I was already. I knew how to restore watches and this and that. But this, I understood then, how it worked with different suppliers and this and that and who does what. And so I kind of had a glimpse into the industry, having worked with these people. And around, but I wasn't too happy with, at the time, Hamilton's quality was going down, not up.
Okay.
Why, I don't know, because wristwatches were starting to take off a bit again. And, when I started there, we were doing, they still did some gold-filled cases and things like that. A couple gold cases and A&I. A&I was the award and incentive side of the business, and then they had the retail side. And we did the development for watches, or both sectors there. And for they were doing a lot of bringing back these American classics, as you want to call it, the Bolton and Wilshire and the Ardmore. And so when I started, those were gold-filled watches. Then they went to 20 micron plated. And then they went to 10 micron plated. And then we went to, I forget what it was. It was like 7 or 8 micron with a steel back. And it just, this watches, the plating doesn't last very long when you get like that. And I was just getting a bit, and it's not what I wanted to do. You know what I mean? I knew watches were my thing, and I wanted to stay in the watch business, but that wasn't going to be my career. Working for a big company like that, making watches is just the way I was told. You know what I mean? And it wasn't. And then sometimes you'd have a good idea. Once in a while, they would implement it. Sometimes you'd have a great idea, and they wouldn't even consider it. So I'll give you one example. We made, I don't know if you remember the World Time watch Hamilton did in the early 90s, late 80s. Looked like the Paddock almost from the 50s.
Yeah, with all the cities all around it.
Yeah, with the cities all around. So we worked hard on developing that watch. And, and when I went in there, I knew a lot. I studied the drawings. I knew a lot about the interchangeability of parts from ETA movements. The hands from this one will fit that one, and the case. So I went into my boss. This was a quartz watch that we did. So I went into my boss and I said, if we just put a little more clearance in the case back, everything is interchangeable from the module on down from the quartz, 955 movement to 2892. So I said, if we just put a little more clearance in there, if we decide to or want to, we could at some point do an automatic version. And I said, a watch like this, we worked so hard on this. This is such a classic looking piece. I think that is something we should consider doing, because it doesn't cost us anything to just leave a little more space in case we decide to do that later. And it wasn't that much needed either. It's not like the watch was going to be fat or anything. And they, they didn't want to do it. He said, no, we're not going to do that. But I just found no good reason for that. And it was things like that just over time, I decided, I wanted to do it my way.
That would have been a really cool watch too.
and I think I have one of those watches downstairs. So I wasn't very happy. The last project I worked on there, I was pleased with. They were working on the 100-year anniversary watch. The book was just finished. Time for America. I don't know if you've seen it. I'm actually mentioned in there a few places, and I have a couple watches in there. So my last project, and it didn't even really dawn on me till recently, last couple of years, I went and found one and bought it, was the 100-year anniversary Hamilton Spur. So they did with that watch what they never did anymore. So it was mechanical. It was in a solid gold case, which for retail was unheard of at that point in time for Hamilton. And I think for years after that, I don't even know if they've made a solid gold watch since.
No, I don't think they have.
I was glad I looking back that I ended on that note. You know what I mean? That was my last project. So I did buy one online a year or so ago, because I'm like, it was my last project. It was gold. I should have that watch. So
that's cool.
It's too small. It's too small for me to wear, but I should still have that watch. Maybe I'll let my wife wear it. So I decided that it wasn't going the way that I wanted. And so I decided, let's make some watches, and just with the idea of seeing what happened. Not that was going to be my career to have a brand, because I was already buying and selling other kinds of watches and vintage watches and repairing watches so I was doing all of that. The idea of making a watch wasn't that I was going to become a watch brand. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That came later, as the bug kind of gets you. That you design and you build one, you want to do another one, you want to do, to this day, I don't know how many watches we've done as far as different ones, because we've done so many special things and one-offs and 5 of this, and I have no idea. But when I look through even some of the things we've done, an insane amount of different watches. I don't think anybody our size will ever come close to the amount of different watches that we've done.
When you were starting back then, was there like a single moment, especially when you were realizing it was going to be a brand? Was there like, okay, this is actually happening, this is gonna work, or was it more of a slow grind?
20 years later, I was like, I guess this is my job.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. I think I made it happen. You never know when you're someplace till you've already passed it. You know what I mean?
You're on the Time to Calibrate podcast. I guess I've made it.
You just don't know. So, doing different things. Plus, somebody said to me, would you do it again or this or that? I said, if somebody came up to me when I started and said, hey, the next 5 or 6 years are going to be this hard, do you want to do it?
Uh-huh.
I don't know what I would. I don't know if I would have. It's better not knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think if you know that up front, maybe you don't make that decision.
Yeah.
Maybe I stay at that company. You know what I mean? And just live life and do it their way. You know what I mean? So it's better not to know, where it's going to go all the time, because that was really hard, and, the ups and downs. And then we had some peaks, in the late 90s, with the .com money and stuff flying around, we got some really big customers and things that because they didn't know what to do with their money.
Yeah.
So why not buy a watch? Why not have a watch made? That's it.
Yeah.
So that helped. And then I had some couple investors at one point. I owned 80% of the company, and 20%, 15 was owned by another guy, and 5% by another guy. I bought the 5% back around 2008, and then this year I bought the 15% back. So now I'm back to 100% ownership of RGM. So, that was useful at the time, to have some money come in and do some work. But, time has gone by, and the time was right to try to bring that back in and not have to answer to anybody else about money. So,
Yeah.
So we're doing well. Business is good. Custom is something that has grown tremendously. We've always done some custom, but the last 10 years, custom has grown a lot.
Yeah.
We do tons of custom.
I've seen on your website a lot of really cool designs and some
Mhm.
interesting finishes to your movements and stuff. It's really cool. How did you decide to base RGM in Lancaster County? Was it all the historical ties to American horology, or did you live there? Did you grow up there? Why Lancaster?
It's all of that, because I'm originally from Maryland, but when I went to Bowman's, is when I realized I liked Lancaster County. A short while after Bowman's, before I went to Wostep, I worked in Lancaster at a clock shop where I was trying to figure out exactly what I was going to be doing, and I lived up here. And then I decided, I was going to go. I applied to Wostep, I was accepted, and then I went there. So, but I knew that I would come back to Lancaster County afterwards. Of course, getting into watches and the pocket watches and the history of American watchmaking, I've always been interested in since then. It just all fit to stay. I liked it here. I was already living here, and there's tons of history here, so it was kind of a natural fit. There's no place I'd rather run my watch company than Lancaster County, Pennsylvania.
No, very cool. And in the early days, what were some of the biggest challenges in establishing a mechanical watch brand in the U.S.? Was it difficult to source equipment? Did you get any pushback from the Swiss brands?
I was never on the radar of the Swiss brands for a long time. You know what I mean? So the industry has changed a lot. It was easier in some respects to start and do something, because the people I dealt with, suppliers in Switzerland and things like that, they were the old school guys, okay, which are all gone now. So they went through the good times, they went through the bad times, you know what I mean? The quartz crisis and all that. They were much more open to dealing. I mean, business was business. That meant big, small, didn't matter who you are. They didn't turn business away. You know what I mean? They grew up in a different era. And as RGM went along and as time went along, I saw the changing of the guard with these companies. And if there's no way I could start today the way I did then, because I didn't have any money when I started. You know what I mean? I mean, literally, I didn't have any money. I was doing business on my personality and getting credit from people and selling them on what I was doing. You know what I mean? And there's nobody today that's gonna make stuff for you based on that.
Mhm.
So in that regard, it was easier. Where it was harder was you didn't have social media. It was difficult to sell on your own, difficult to get the word out there and show people what you're
No
doing.
websites, nothing like that.
The websites were in infancy, so even if we had a website earlier on, but there weren't that many people looking
No,
up
they'd have to find
websites.
your name and figure out that's where it need to go.
So so it was kind of like, this was a little easier. This was a lot harder. And, I managed to survive. And by doing that, we're now reaping the benefits of being around as long as we have, and done the things that we've done. And we've tried to always do everything real, whether we made it or not, it has to be the real thing. And that's something that I've always been a stickler about. With our watches, for instance, I don't like coatings or platings because they can't really be refinished. So all the cases are of a solid material.
Uh-huh.
If I don't like what they call faux watchmaking, or what I call faux watchmaking, I don't like a dial that kind of looks like an enamel dial, but it's not.
Yeah.
The old days would have been enamel. Now we just kind of make it with the shiny paint and try to make it look like. No, we don't do any of that. So everything has to be the real technique, whether it be engine turning, enameling, or something else. It has to be the real deal. And then, of course, movements. That was a giant mountain to climb to get to the point where you could sell an in-house movement. And we don't make 100% of the movement, but we make over 90%. And to tell you the truth, nobody makes 100% of their movement. No matter what they tell you, I guarantee you, nobody makes 100%. So just get that out there, because, some people say, oh, but they make everything. I said, really? Okay. I don't think so. Even in Switzerland, there's nobody making everything except for a big group. They may own a company somewhere that they may have all the elements in all these different companies.
Yeah, that's what Rolex has done. They bought
Mhm.
the people that made the things for them. So technically it's
Right.
theirs.
Technically it's theirs because they bought this
Exactly.
company down the
Yeah.
road that does this element. This company over here does that
Yeah.
one. And yeah, and that's fine. But there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in the
Oh, is
watch
there ever?
business. And sometimes it's not what they say. Sometimes it's what they don't say. You know what I mean? You say something and just smile at me. You know what I mean? You know, I'll give you an example. You know the Audemars Star Wheel
Yeah.
watch from
Yeah.
remember that
Yeah.
from the
Yeah. Yeah.
90s?
Yeah.
Beautiful watch. I love that watch when it came out. Fantastic. I remember seeing somebody from Audemars at the Basel Fair, and that watch first came out. I said, this thing is, I said, you guys came up with something unbelievable. I said, this thing is just beautiful. I said, what a great invention. And they smiled, thank you. And they're like 3 months later, I get an auction catalog. There's a Breguet pocket watch from like 1900 or 1910 or I don't know what it was, maybe 1920.
Yeah.
And the exact same system.
Oh, wow.
Obviously, they didn't invent the Star
Yeah.
Wheel system, but they're not going to tell you that. They didn't tell me that they did, but they didn't tell me that they did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the same. So, that's common, that maybe that person genuinely didn't know, you know what I mean? Because not everybody knows. But there's so many things that have been done over time. There's not that many things that are 100% brand
Yeah.
new,
Oh, that's cool. But one thing that Mark asks there, he asks sort of a loaded question with a few little questions within it. He asked, was it difficult to source equipment? Because I was watching some videos on the equipment you have, and I know some of these machines are very old. And how did that all work? Just getting that together on that side of things.
I was lucky with a lot of it, but for instance, the engine turning machines.
Yeah.
I was always like side fascinated with engine turning. Ever since the 80s, you get the Daniels book on watchmaking, and then the back, there's a chapter on engine turning, or in French, guilloche. And I was always fascinated with that. I just enamored with it. So at one point, I found out there was a company in Rhode Island that had said they had bought a company in New Jersey. And in this company, unbeknown to them, until they were picking everything up, there was like a room in the back with the hell these antique machines in it. They didn't even know it was part of the deal, but it was, So I wound up making a deal on one of those machines with paying too much for it And so basically I gave some watches and money to get this machine, just because where do you find them? You know what I mean? And this one was great condition. It was also wasn't one of the wood tables one. It was one of the cast iron ones, so you have less flex and things. So I knew I wanted this machine. So I made this deal and paid a lot for it and had it shipped down here. And then the trick was, okay, well now what do we do with it? You know, I've got it, but you know, don't really know how to use it. So we fiddled around with it, but we weren't able to get, we could make designs and shape, but get a quality cut out of one of these machines. There's quite a number of things you need to know and do. It's not so. So one day a guy stopped by. His name was, I don't remember his last name. His first name was Dale. He was from California, and he made these little boxes and containers, and he decorated them with instruments. He had several of these machines. And I said, hey, if you're ever coming back this way, if you could stay a few days, I'd gladly pay you if you could just give us a little bit of the basics of how to operate this thing. He said, okay. So then, I don't know, it was 3 or 4 months later, he called me up and said, hey, I'm coming to Pennsylvania, then we worked it out. And true to his word, he came out, he showed us, the basic functions of how you use this machine. Now you need a lot more than that to get good cuts, but that gives you a starting point. So we started to play with it and make adjustments, try things, read. There's only a couple books on it. We made sure I got those. We would read about it. And then when I would go to Switzerland or Germany, there were some people there that I had befriended that do the engine turning work, and I would present my problems to them of what I was seeing. And the one guy was particularly open was Mr. Broadbeck. He's the gentleman who sold all his equipment to Kerry Voitilainen and now works for Kerry, training people. And he's an older guy, and he didn't have any family. I used to visit him in his workshop, in his house. So we'd sit back and have a beer and we'd go over stuff. Great old guy. Loved the machines the way that I love them, but he didn't have anybody to leave them to or anything. So I'm sure he's very happy that he found Kerry and that the machines could go where they're going to be appreciated. And now he's training people, which, to how to use them. Of course, Kerry's getting that's a great asset there. So he would help me a lot. And then occasionally a couple other people would, and then over time of just doing it, asking questions, trying things, eventually you get to the point where, we were getting good things out of it that we could actually use. And then of course, since then till now, that's only gotten better and better and better and better. So now we can make beautiful engine turn dials and things. It's not a problem now, but it is a journey. It is not something you just 1, 2, 3 do.
Sounds like the stars kind of aligned there with the timing and the people.
And then the machines, I had one. So then once you kind of get known for doing something, then sometimes the machines find you. So the next machine was Dale, this guy who showed us some of that. He had cancer. He wound up dying. He had 4 or 5 machines out there. Somebody from the estate contacted me. I wound up buying one of those machines and had them shipped out here, which I still have. And then there was a gentleman, Mr. White in Texas, that did engine turning, and he was really into it. And I'd never met him in person, but we talked on the phone. We used to email with each other about who had what and different equipment, different adjustments. And he did like art stuff. And he lived on a remote farm in the woods, big piece of land, beautiful big house, and separate was a shop in outside of Dallas, Texas. And unfortunately, one day, 2 guys knew that he did jewelry stuff and that he had gold there, and he was murdered on his property.
Oh boy!
And I didn't really know what happened. And one day, somebody sent me an email from that estate and said, "Hey, are you interested in the engine turning equipment that Mr. White had passed away?" So I was interested. I didn't know what happened. I said, "Oh, I was sorry to hear that, but yes, I was interested. Let me know what you think." And I, certainly am interested. Then, because I knew he passed away, I went on the internet and found out what happened to him, because I was curious, because we had emailed for 3 or 4 years. We had talked on the phone. I was like, well, what happened to the guy? So anyway, I wound up buying everything that he had. He had 2 machines, a lot of accessories that are hard to find. So I bought 2 plant machines from him, a straight line and a rose engine, and everything related to engine turning. So we flew to Texas, me and one other guy, because I knew some of it would have to be taken apart. So I wanted to be there to know what screw goes where, and I didn't want to leave that to somebody else. So we flew down there. We rented a truck. We went over. They had people there to help load it. We took the machines into 2 major parts. Had them put them on the truck. We strapped everything down. I made sure everything was going to be fine, because we had a long drive, and then went through the shop and collected everything related to engine turning, pattern bars, sharpeners, all sorts of things. And so we got basically everything that was in his shop that was related to that. We trucked it back over like a day and a half, and
Wow.
then that one of those, the Rose engine, is still that plant from him is the machine we use the most.
Wow.
That's a great machine. So that's how the engine turning thing happened. Other equipment, not so hard to find, really, other than the other hard one was, we wanted to do the Côte de Genève, the dam skinning lines, So over in Switzerland, because, things had gotten so popular, it was almost impossible to find an old machine that was made to do this. And the cheapest new machine I could find, and I remember this is 20 years ago, was like over $20,000. So we're like, that's not going to fit the budget. You know what I mean? So I found out that you ever see those little servo drill presses?
Yeah.
There was a time when they did some specialty ones with another company on a milling base. And you can adjust the head left and right and front and back. You can't do that with a drill press, but that's what's needed in order to do a clean Côte de Genève line. So I knew that would work. So I found one of those machines with that setup used and bought it. I paid like $4,500 for it. And then a local machinist guy I had make a special table for me, so that we can do straight lines, circular lines. So he makes a nice table for us for it. And we still use that to this day, finish the lines on all of our movements. So sometimes you have to get creative in that respect.
Sure.
But we have a lot of other equipment that we've gathered over the years. But equipment, fortunately never really became a problem for us.
The other thing I was kind of curious, talking about sourcing equipment, I was wondering, first of all, how many watchmakers are actually on your team now, and how difficult is it to source a good watchmaker these days?
That's difficult. I have 6 watchmakers plus me.
Yeah.
So it is difficult. I mean, most of them have been with me a while. The newest one I have has been here about a year and 2 months. He's strictly working on modern service of like the typical movements that you'd run into. At some point, we'll try to work him in, depending on, how fast somebody develops. At some point, if possible, we work him also into building our watches and movements. But yeah, finding somebody is not an easy task.
Yeah, I imagine.
And they have to be able to fit into our small shop. So it's not just ability. It has to be ability, personality, willingness to want to not just work for some big brand working on the same couple of movements day in and day out, year in, year out, which probably would pay you more because they're in these big markets and big cities, and they can, throw all the benefits at you too that that we can't as a small brand. So that can be a challenge, but right now we're in a good spot.
That's good stuff.
Good.
RGM is known for producing in-house calibers such as the 801. We talked about the 20 and even a tourbillon. Can you walk us through what goes into developing an in-house movement from scratch?
Well, you got to have an idea first. What is it you want to do? What is it you want to make? And we developed 3 in pretty short order, from the 801. The second one was the tourbillon. And then for our 20th anniversary was the caliber 20. The only one we've done since then is we did a sweep second version of the 801, which has a number of different parts, but obviously also shared parts. So, but the first one that we did took a long time. It was about 2000 to 2007 before we could sell a watch with one of our movements. And because it was a lot of trial and error and learning, and what was going to be the best way to do it. Certainly, we don't make we make very classic things, so it's not like we were trying to reinvent some strange setup. So we did very classic things, but still just to accomplish the normal things you need to do to make a watch, from whether it be a wheel or a bridge, a main plate, regulator system. It's something that's gotten easier over time, because but when the first ones you do are going to be a lot more difficult. The finishing has come a long way too. So like an 801 that we sold in 2007, if you compare it to an 801 we make today, there's a lot of differences and improvements we've made, not only in the aesthetics, but also functional improvements. Then we also wanted to add options. Well, I think we're the only watch company that offers like standard movement options. Like you could add a motor barrel, you could add a hacking second, you could add wolf's tooth winding wheels, or you can add a solid gold balance bridge with a swan neck regulator. I don't know of anybody else doing that. So it's certainly not easy to do that. It's certainly,
You also offer different finishing on those movements, don't you?
Yeah, you can get different finishing. So yeah, it starts with kind of an idea. We sit down, we start to draw some things. We figure out what are we going to use as far as the layout. How are we going to do it? Are we going to add any other functions? And there's things that we've developed that we actually never used or did, just because we might have thought maybe it was not practical, or it was, it just wasn't going to fit into the scheme of where we were at the time, But there's some new things that we're working on, and I never really talk about those things until they're ready to happen, because things can change, that. Plus, we don't want people asking us a bunch of questions about something that isn't there yet. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
So we try to keep that under wraps, but we're always working on new things, and that includes ideas for movements. So we'll see what happens in the next couple of years. But we can only build so many watches. We're small, so when you hand build them, basically, our movements are not industrialized. So even though we build them in a precise way, they're basically hand built. It's not like machinery in Switzerland where a company can pump out 1,000 movements or 10,000 movements. That's an industrialized movement. This is a different process of making a movement. I tell people it's more like one of those shops in North Carolina that build race cars, comparing that to a big factory that's pumping out thousands of cars. You know what I mean? It's a very different process, but in the end, you both have a car. But it's a very different car. It's a different process. So, that's always a challenge with the size that we are, because we can only build so many movements a month with all the things that we do. So the more orders we get, the longer the lead times are for those. But we do have lots of other models that we build around other movements, either a modern Swiss movement, or in the case of the 222, We build around the Hamilton 10 size pocket watch movements, and those have been very successful, and that's a very, very good movement. And when we rebuild those, they even run better than when they were new.
When you're like, what's the starting point when you're developing a new movement? Is it the form first, or do you start with the complication? Like,
Well, you got to know what you want it to do. First of all, is it going to be a tourbillon, or is it going to be a time only 801 watt? Is it something we want to be able to add complications to maybe later? You might want to know that at the beginning, because you might do something different to leave that door open. Where might we want that on the dial? You know what I mean? We don't want to put something in the way that would preclude that. So there's a lot of advanced things, and sometimes you get to a certain point along the way and you come up with a different idea, and so then you might change it. You know what I mean? It's an evolving thing. It's not like this is what we're doing and then that's it. Usually things evolve. You get like the same way when we did the Pennsylvania tourbillon. At first we were going to have hands from the center of the dial like normal, but looking at that big tourbillon cage at 9 o'clock, I thought, you know what, let's open this up, put a dial at 3 clock side that kind of mimics that sort of size of the tourbillon opening, and then we won't have but a small dial. We'll decorate the movement, and which we did with the engine turning. We put plaques on, and in the end, it came out really, really nice. But that wasn't the initial thought. So it evolved as we were going. What if we did this? You know what I mean? That's generally two of us sit at the computer, and that's how it happens, and then we change stuff, and then maybe we go home and sleep at night and come up. Maybe I wake up at 3 a.m. with another idea. It said, and then I can't sleep the rest of the night because this idea is circling around in my head, and that does happen where I can't sleep because I have an idea, so sometimes that happens.
Well, that's got to be complicated when to move the pinion from the middle of the dial offset to 3 o'clock. Must be quite the undertaking. Everything must change, I guess, from there on.
Well, not everything. We still have a center wheel.
Okay.
So the initial drive is still coming up through the middle. And then, of course, you got to gear it over to the side. So, you're adding parts and complexity.
Does it add thickness?
To make that happen? Well, no, because we already had thickness there because of the cage and everything else. So we were already dealing with, we already had room to do that.
Okay.
If it was a time only watch and we did that, then it would certainly add thickness.
This is so cool. I like this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And asking for, talking to a real watchmaker about these things is so cool. So the finishing on your watches is really stunning. The perlage, the Geneva stripes, the engine turning, the anglage, all that stuff. Why is traditional hand finishing still so important to you?
Because I'm a watchmaker, and I love traditional watchmaking. I don't like, and I'm not saying it's not okay for someone else to like it. It is, but I don't like the real modern processes or materials. And I mean, if it's a mechanical watch at the end of the day, so in my mind, if you have a mechanical watch and it's got this high-tech hairspring and a high-tech this, and this is electroformed, and that, I mean, at this point, do we need it to be mechanical?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm more old school. So I like watches that also can be repaired by a watchmaker, a person, even 100 years from now, maybe a qualified guy, not a guy that's got to have, this process and got to be able to print this or do that, or, that's not what I like. So I think of things in a very traditional way. I design that way. And I look to, the great watchmaking histories in general, and also here in America, to inspire some of the ideas. And I actually have a presentation. I gave it down in Washington a year and a half ago. I have a presentation I do, like a PowerPoint, that shows the inspirations from the past to that are in our watches. I'll be giving it again this winter at the NAWCC Museum. I generally give short notice on that. So basically, if somebody's interested in that, they should follow our social media because of being in Pennsylvania, I don't want the weather to derail it. So generally, I'll give a notice like 10 days out when I think the weather is going to be clear enough that we could do it. And then I'll say, hey, on this Saturday, I'm going to be giving this presentation. It's free. You can meet me at the museum at this time, and in the theater there, I'll give that. So that's something that I will do. And I totally forgot what your original question was.
Oh, is it why traditional hand finishing is still so important? Yeah.
Because, I just love the way, dam skinning looks, Cote de Genève, anglage, it's finished we finish under the bridges like they did years ago. You don't even, some of the finishing you never see as the owner of the watch, only the watchmaker sees. And we keep that alive in what we're doing, because I think that's the way it's supposed to be and should be. There's so many things in this world that are cheapened compared to the way they used to do them. You look at a building, you look at how bricks were laid, you look the way, so everything, and you look back 100 years ago or 120 years ago, they took pride in what they did. And it shows today, and it's still standing, right?
Yeah.
And now you see things they make to today, a lot of them. You'd be lucky if they're still there in 10 years. Here's a funny thing. I drive, this is totally off topic, but it's wild. I drive home, and there's these warehouses they built outside of town, these big warehouses. What they're going to put in there, I have no idea. Brand new, right? They got these numbers on the side of the building. There's 4 numbers for the address, right at the top of this building. I drive by one day, one of the numbers is gone. Now, they haven't even opened the building yet, okay? They haven't even opened the building yet, and the numbers off of the building. So I'm like, well, how in the world did they put how long did they think that was going to last? If they don't even have the building yet, who put that up there? And whoever did had to know that this doesn't work, right? Whatever this price. So then like a month later, I drive by the other building, which isn't open yet either. 2 of the numbers are going off of that one now. It's like, it's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like they'll put something up and they'll know it's going to rust within, 8 months. My mind is, why would you put something outside? It's going to rust in 8 months. You know what I mean? It's like everything is like got to look really good for day one, but then after that,
Yeah, there's no forethought.
Right. So I'm anti that. That's why our watches are built the way they are.
That's really cool. Does RGM still offer official servicing for watch brands? I know that back in the day, it used to be the official service center for Girard-Perregaux. How did that partnership come about, and what does that part of your business look like today?
Years ago, we've always done repair, restoration, service. My friend Ron Jackson, when he worked for Girard-Perregaux, he's local. He works for Frank Mueller now. We have lunch every once in a while, and he's a sales guy and all that, but he lives here in the county. And years ago, around 2003, he contacted me. Girard-Perregaux had kind of separated from the distributor at the time and opened their own distributorship, and they needed service. So he came to us, and I said, yeah, we were definitely interested. In 2003, of course, we weren't as busy as we are now with RGM. We were busy, but not nearly as busy as we are now. So that developed through him, and we became the official service center for Girard-Perregaux. And then while it was alive, Jean Richard, which started out as Daniel Jean Richard and then Jean Richard. And that chugged along. And then in 2008, 5 years in, when the financial crisis kind of hit, Ron Jackson was let go. Of course, in print it says he went, he chose another opportunity. That's what they always do in the magazine, which I just thought was so funny. No, that's not what happened. But anyway, that's what they've always picked another career. But so he went on then and is doing fine. But they were just looking for ways to cut costs because they were hurting. You know what I mean? But they still needed service, so we were still there. He was gone. other people came in and went, and it was kind of a weird relationship at that point for us, because the people here were coming and going, and we were still there. And then when Gino Macalusa died, and the family sold the majority stake in the company, is when we saw the writing on the wall then, because basically they wanted to get rid of us. The new people wanted to open their own service and do all that. And that's what happened. So they kind of phased us out. They opened their own service in Jersey. And then I think within a year of that, they wound up buying Ulysses Nardin.
Yeah.
And then they closed the service center in Jersey, and they combined everything down in Florida. And I think that's where it still is. So that's how that relationship went. But so we were with them for 10 years. So basically from 2003 to 2013, we did all the service here for those two brands. We were also doing service for Watch Buy's brands. We still do some service for some of their brands. And then we also do service for Fortis Watch Company. And we do some service for a few others like Titoni, and it's a few other small brands. Eberhard, we're one of the places that do. They have two places here. We're one of the places. And it's a handful of, there's a couple other guys like Temption and a few others. So most of those are small, especially compared to what we used to get from Girard-Perregaux. It was a lot. So so it was a little bit of a transitional period around 2013, because we lost a lot of business, but things have changed a lot since then. So if somebody, I wouldn't take on a customer that big now, because we don't have time for it. So in the end, it all worked out for the best for us, but that's how it kind of all happened service wise. But I've always liked to keep an anchor of service, and also doing other things in antique and vintage, because I think you build a better watchmaker in the end when they have to experience different watches. And also antique and vintage, there's no oiling chart, there's no manual on how to do it. You have to use your brain and think and problem solve. And I think sometimes with modern watchmakers only work on the same few calibers, they kind of lose some of the ability to problem solve, because they never have to problem solve. Something doesn't work, they just change a part. And then, now it's working. Okay, why? But it doesn't matter, it's working.
Is there a certain type of, as a watchmaker, is there a certain complication that you personally love to work on? And on the flip side, is there one that maybe when it shows up on the table, you're sweating a little bit that you don't like working on so much?
There's always a favorite thing. I still do restorations. And stuff. So I still do repeaters and calendars and other watches, not as many as I used to, but I managed to always fit some in. I also do work for the NAWCC Museum. I'll do some volunteer work.
Oh, okay.
2 years ago, I did Hamilton #1, and 3 months ago, I restored Hamilton #2, the first two. So I've worked on the first two watches with the first two serial numbers for them.
Wow.
And we did a Girard-Perregaux with a spherical hairspring for them. But, complicated. I don't like things that aren't built well. That's the watch you don't want to work on.
Yeah.
It's usually something that's less expensive and not built well. Even if it's a repeater, if it's not a really good repeater, it's more difficult to work on. You know what I mean? Anything that's not, usually the things that are made well are easier to work on, and they work better in the end. So anything that's not, it's not a particular complication I don't like. It's really whether it's built well or not. Same way with the jumping hour. If the jumping hour is built well, then yeah, it's nice to work on. If it's not a good one, it's going to give you problems. And sometimes you can't always fix an inherent design flaw. So there's certain watches that we won't accept sometimes for repair, if I know the history of that movement and I know the history of that as being sort of having a design flaw, I'm not going to be able to overcome that.
Mhm.
So I won't accept it, So it kind of reminds me of when in the 80s when the Dubois Desprats modular chrono became very popular. And on an automatic movement, it works, But Tag Heuer at the beginning also put it on a quartz movement. Doesn't work. What I mean is if everything is perfect in the laboratory conditions, it works.
Mhm.
But in real life, it doesn't. So even they, in short order, stopped accepting those for repair because you can't fix it. There's not enough power to drive it in the normal course of life and wear and tear and dirt. And so, if somebody sends me one of those, I'm not going to accept it for repair. We're not going to have success.
Do you ever, you mentioned before that on your own movements, you'll finish underneath the bridges, like a true watchmaker. Have you ever come across a movement that you started taking apart and then like, oh wow, they do it this way just like we do, or or seen things that you hadn't seen before and or were impressed with that you'd want to do?
Sometimes especially see that on vintage or antique stuff. You'll see some of the early like a Vacheron from the 1930s, and see some of the polishing and some of the work that was done, or really early. I've had the privilege of working on some very special watches. Patek Grand Complication for the museum. I did years ago, and I made a presentation out of that. But you go through there and see how everything was made and finished, and the thought and care that was taken, especially back in the day. Even the highest grade watches today, a comparable piece made in probably 1920 is got a little edge on it. You know what I mean? It's and I think even some of the materials I don't think you can get steel today as good as the steel you could get back in the day. Now I don't know why. I'm not a metallurgist. I couldn't tell you what it is, but if you look at the steel hardness, the way that it will polish, or the way even hardened steel, won't break as easy or bend as easy as I haven't seen a modern steel that is good as some of the steel you could get back in the 30s and the 20s.
Interesting.
So there's something that was being done different, and I don't know what it is, but I don't think anybody can get steel like they had back in the day.
Oh wow. So you were a true pioneer back in the day online with the watch community, launching equationtime.com, well before forums and media and all that stuff had started, and social media and all that. What inspired you to create that? And what did you think when a young whippersnapper, me, decided to give you a dive watch forum because it's grown too large for me to handle by myself?
Well, there was a couple forums out there, and I thought it was kind of cool. I thought it might be nice to try to do that. There was a little teeny internet company here. They've been gone forever. And I went in there and I said, hey, I'd like to do a forum, and showed them a couple examples of what I wanted. They were like, yeah, we can do that. We can set that up for you. So, being naive and gung ho, I mean, why not, right? How hard can this be, right? Okay. So we did it and set it up, and it started to get, like I said earlier, get a little bit of traction when there were some problems over at Time Zone. And then, when you had the dive watch forum, which was doing good, I was actually quite surprised that you wanted to give it over to Equation of Time. I thought, maybe, what does he want to partner? What does he want to do? And, I just thought you had so much activity there. Why would you want to give that away? And of course, you gave it to the one forum that, wasn't going to really put anything behind it. We're too busy with RGM. So, I had all my eggs in RGM and not too many eggs for anything else. So, it was like the stepchild forums, Equation of Time. What I mean by that is it ran on the sheer will of the visitors. Is the only reason it stayed alive as long as it did. really. It really did. And I didn't want to close it down. It just got to the point where it made no sense to keep it open anymore. And I was very sad um, the day that we shut it down because, all that history there and all the ups and downs and, we could have done things differently, but, forums in general were kind of on the wayside anyway. Time had passed and we didn't do a good job with it like we could have. It was only because of the visitors that it did as well as it did. Without them and the faithful few that kept it alive. And I won't mention names, but there's a good 5, 6, 7, 8 names that come to mind that really kept it alive, and we appreciated that they did that. They're great guys, and I just wasn't at a point in time and where I could really give it any attention, and that's why I'm still amazed it lasted as long as it did. Really, especially with that mistreatment.
I'll tell you why I gave it to Equation of Time. Timezone.com was looking to cash out at one point, or we're trying to be more corporate or more, I don't know how to turn a dime, right? How to make some money out of it. Equation of Time was about passion. The people that were on there, we were not a lot of people. We were all very passionate about watchmaking. We knew how passionate you were about making your watches. Brandon Sparks was a good friend of mine. So is Tyler Yarbaugh. I don't know if you remember him too. These are two. Yeah, these are guys that I got along super well with. We saw eye to eye on things, and again, all we wanted to do is build a community and learn and share. And that's, I think, that's what Equation Time did best. Is we had the expertise whenever you came around to explain things to us whenever we needed to. It was a community, and I had grown that dive watch forum pretty quickly, and it gotten out of hand for me to handle by myself, and I needed help, and I didn't have any way of hiring someone or entrusting someone out. Honestly, it was the only home I could think of that fit properly, and we had a lot of fun.
It certainly, Equation of Time wasn't about money. In all the years that it was open, I can guarantee you I made zero money on Equation of Time. That only cost me money. And especially the last 10 years, it was strictly paying money just to keep the life support on.
Yeah.
That was basically it. And, but it's because I didn't want to shut it down. And it just, enough time had passed there and things were happening. And I don't even remember what year we shut it down now. But
I don't remember either.
It wasn't that many years back, maybe 5, something maybe.
Bob, you might not know this, but and there are a lot of other brands that try to do collaborative designed watches. But Equation of Time, Roland had the forethought of not hiring, but enlisting its members to design watches together as a group. And we were quite successful at the first couple, I think first 2 or 3. And that was a lot of fun. I mean, it was literally by committee, by consensus. And we had a time-only watch. We made one called it was like the C1, Collaboration 1, Collaboration 2. And then we decided to make a dive watch, which we called C3, but SA3. And that had, multiple different kinds of hands, die colors, bezel design.
I still have tons of parts.
Yeah, the C3 was really...
we didn't make any money on Equation Time. That was a total loss, but it was a lot of fun.
That's cool.
I often wonder, what am I going to do with all these parts?
You should put them back together again and do something with it, because that was a cool design.
I should tell them to Marc. Yeah. That's what I should do. Marc should buy all of these parts at a discounted price, and have fun building the old EOT
watches. It was way ahead of its time. Way ahead of its time.
That's very
How did you come up with that idea of enlisting us to do something like that?
I think part of it came from Rich when he was here, and a couple of the other guys, and we just, I'm not sure if any one person had the idea, but it was quite an experience. I think the most successful one we did actually was the C1.
Yeah.
But the first one was the one that sold the most. But based on everything we have and did, we never profited beyond, cabinet full of parts. So I don't know what I'm going to do with them. When I die, when I die one day, people are going to be like, "What are these? What are we going to do with this?" It's
Yeah.
history, right?
Yeah.
So you can't make money on everything, and I've certainly learned that lesson many times. People say about making watches, was that successful, or was this, I'll say, you know what, in my mind, if I wanted to do something really bad and I made it happen, even if it was 1 watch, 5 watches, 10 watches, but it went from here to my hand and existed, and it's what I wanted to do, then it was successful.
Yeah.
Making money on it, it depends what your definition of successful is, I never got in the watch business to be a millionaire. You know what I mean? It was, it's still true today. I started doing this because I wanted to make a living at what I love. Can I make what I love sustain me and my family? And I've been able to do that. It was never, I often make decisions that cost money that are not realized sometimes even by the customer. But I know it and I'm happy with it. And I know it's built that way. And that's important to me. Even though if I took a different viewpoint, I could realize more money, but I wouldn't personally be happy with what I produced. So, how do you measure success? That's how I measure it. So
That's awesome. And getting back to RGM watches here, how do you balance honoring traditional American design and watchmaking with modern aesthetics and expectations?
I don't do a whole lot of modern aesthetics, as you can see. Maybe my take on modern, but everything is sort of rooted in classic. And what I like about classic is classic was in 20 years ago. It's in today. It's going to be in 20 years from now. And you see a lot of trendy watches. Some brands that were pretty trendy, came up pretty heavy, pretty strong, sold a lot of stuff, made a lot of money, and then disappeared.
Yeah.
And I think that some of these trendy designs and things, there'll be a point where people will look back and go, "Oh, why'd they do that?" You know what I mean? So I've never jumped on trends or things. People say, how do you decide what you're going to make? Do you do market studies? Do you do this? Do that? No. How do I decide? I just make what I like and hope there's enough people to like them. That's it. I do not look at what does the market need or what's hot. No, I don't do any of that. I just make what I like. And then.
So what is the typical day like for you? Are you still working on watches yourself quite a bit, or more management, sales, bit of all of the above? Or
It's a combination of many things. So some days I'm working on new ideas, new designs. We do a lot of custom stuff. So I also work with clients on what they want. And then I know what we can do, what we can't do, what we shouldn't do. So I have to work with them to achieve what they want, achieve something that we can do in a proper quality way, and try to make something that looks good too. You know what I mean? So you have to. Some customers are easier than others to achieve that with.
Mhm.
So I have to do that. Sometimes I'm doing in the middle of a restoration or two, where I might work a few hours on that. I'm also dealing with media. People don't know what you do, then you can't keep doing it. So I have to deal with, is someone going to be reviewing a watch social media? What do we need to have on the website? Do I need to work on a press release that has all the specs and the data and what's coming out new? Sometimes it's difficult to do all the things that I need to do. And, I am getting older, so I have to pace myself. I typically work Like I'm way overdue now. I better let me send my wife a text.
It's our fault. I'm so sorry.
My wife's gonna be like, "What the are you doing?" Let me just send her this.
This guy that used to be on my forum 25 years ago asked me to come on a podcast. I'm gonna be late for supper.
Let me tell her what I'm doing.
Sorry, Mark was a little long-winded with that intro there at the beginning.
Okay, that's all right. Well, now that we've been interrupted.
That never happens.
So typically my work day is sometimes I stay late when I'm in the middle of something, but I used to work really long days. I typically work somewhere from 9 to around 3 o'clock or 3:30. That's a typical day. And for me, I don't pick a time to quit. Have I achieved what I wanted to achieve for the day?
Mm-hmm.
If I've achieved that by 4 o'clock, fine. If I achieved it by 2 o'clock, fine. Then I don't, then I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
And I'm still always, I have a little workshop at home where I experiment now with enamel.
Oh, okay.
And that keeps me busy on the winter nights. And I can experiment with making some enamel jewelry and stuff like that, partly for fun, but also partly for work. I can see colors of enamel, things that I like, things that I don't like, things we might want to use in a watch. And then I'm also working with, we do engine turning, we do many things here, but there's certain techniques that we work on that we do from the outside, but they're the real technique. So I may be working with what I want with an enamelist or a hand painter or somebody, a hand engraver, you know what I mean? So, I manage that aspect too, to make sure I get what I want. And then I come up with ideas all the time. People say, how do you come up with the ideas? They look at my stuff. And I said, you know what? I've never had a shortage of ideas. The problem isn't the ideas. Sometimes is I have more ideas than I can put into play. So there's where the problem is.
Yeah.
Which ones are you going to do? Which ones are going to have to wait, or which ones have to be put on hold, so, yeah, we don't run a watch company like any other watch company. So it's definitely different how we do things here. And I think for the better. I think in the end, it's better for the client because they end up with a better watch. They end up with a better experience. And what better way to be able to buy a watch from the people that actually make the watch and deal with them directly, without everything else in the middle. And it doesn't cost, $300,000. You know what I mean? So,
Are there any design elements or complications you feel underrated or that you wish more collectors paid attention to? I remember back in the day, you had a fascination for shaped movements. Is that still the case?
Yeah, I mean, the caliber 20 is a shape movement. We have one. I don't think we're going to be making a lot of shape movements, but I knew that we had to, we're going to have a shape movement, and we worked hard to make it aesthetically pleasing. If you look at the caliber 20, the shape of the bridges and the way everything sort of flows nicely, having nice shapes is important. I've always liked complications from jumping hour. One of our early watches was a jumping hour. Our first watch was a chronograph with full calendar in moon phase. We've also done skeleton chronographs, minute repeaters, tourbillon, perpetual calendar. There's a lot of complications. I've always loved complications. Maybe there's a couple we haven't done yet that I would like to get on the books one day while I'm still around. We've never done a split-second chronograph. I almost did years ago, and I wish I did, but some other things took priority, and we didn't wind up doing it. And we don't have to make a lot of them, even if it's just a few. It's fine. I just like to have it on the books that we did it. Perpetual calendar. We're working on a new perpetual calendar that's coming out next year. It's one of the few things I'll tell you about that's coming. It's based on a modified Swiss movement that we modify, and has a very classic traditional calendar with Moon. So it's going to look very classic. The case is very classic. We have a collaboration coming out in the coming weeks that you'll see. I can't really talk about that, but there's something coming.
Sure you can. No one's listening. Shh.
Well, that's why I did this podcast. I knew this would be one that probably wouldn't get out there. So.
I walked right into that, didn't I?
So yeah, complications have always been core to me. If you look at our early watches, and we have a few. Another thing that really intrigued me was my wife and I had a wonderful time in 2018. We went to Switzerland and we went to the EPHJ and we're visiting different people. And I got the idea that I wanted to venture into more of the art watches. The handcraft and art type pieces. And I worked hard to find people that could do things that we couldn't do. So like, for instance, wood marquetry, hand painting, miniature hand painting by microscope on mother of pearl, stone mosaic dials, and we've done all these things now, and then occasionally we'll do something new for like under a custom basis, and everything. I like art. So I have found somebody new for another technique that I'm working with. We're trying to come up with the what we're going to do is art wise right now. So it's like, I want to do it. They're there. They want to do it. Now we just need to pick. What are we going to do? You know what I mean? So now we're looking through, old Renaissance art and other stuff. And we want to do something. Even if it's just one piece, it's fine. It shows. Often I do one piece of something because the idea is to give you the idea.
Yeah.
Okay, here's what we did, and here's what we can offer. Now you come up with an idea that we can do this the same way. Because sometimes I do those art watches and they never sell. People like them, whatever. The watch doesn't sell, but it sells other watches because now people understand what's possible.
Yeah, what you're capable of.
So I took a few. We just put this year a brand new display in the Watch and Clock Museum here in Columbia, the National Association of Clock Collectors Museum. And I put some of those original art watches in there too that sold other things, but they never sold. But they're techniques that they didn't have in there. So I have in there the first wood marquetry watch that we did. I have a hand-painted mother of pearl with a butterfly, and the paint's mixed with loom. So at nighttime, it will glow. And I have a cloisonné, enamel cloisonné piece in there that's inspired. That was the first cloisonné we did. And it's inspired by a Monet painting.
Oh, my wife would like
beautiful
that.
Classic stuff. So I love that they're there in the museum. Other people can enjoy them now, and they're not just sitting in the vault. They've already served their purpose. So that's a nice home for them. We also have the first RGM we ever made. Watch number 1 is in that display also. And I was able to buy that back around 2008. I had to sell it early on just to, keep things moving, unfortunately. And then in 2008, a guy called me and said, "Hey, I think I just bought your first watch." And I was thinking, you guys should have it. And he actually sold it to me at a very reasonable price. He sold it to me basically for what he paid for it, but he thought we should have it.
That's cool, man.
And he knew that it wasn't something we would ever sell.
Wow.
And so I put it in the Watch and Clock Museum where everybody can see it, and that's where it's going to stay.
That's amazing. Do you feel there's a genuine revival of American watchmaking in recent years? And where do you see it headed?
It appears to be a revival that I can see with different levels and different ways. There's a number of brands. Not everybody's necessarily making things, but a few guys are. And I think that'll continue, but I think it'll stay much like the bicycle industry is gone. We're never going to have a big Schwinn in America again, making thousands of bicycles. but we have lots of artists and bicycle makers building frames and building up beautiful high-end specialty bikes. And I think that's, for the most part, how the watch industry will go here, except for the people that tend to just want to be a brand and maybe have something made somewhere else that they sell at an inexpensive price. Which we see that with bicycles too, but we're not going to have an Elgin or a Waltham or a Hamilton, a big industrial maker here, and people, somebody said to me one day, well, why don't you make hairsprings and jewels and I said, well, first of all, that would be the quickest way to go out of business. If I want to go out of business, I'm going to set up a manufactury to make jewels here, and then I'm going to make the jewels for me, and I'm going to have all these other jewels and no one to buy them. so it's like, what would I do with these jewels? Oh yeah, I mean, you think the people in Europe are going to want to buy my American jewels when they have several jewel makers there? That ain't going to happen, right?
And jewel makers have been making them for 100 years. Like, leave the specialists make the specialist stuff.
The environment is not there to do that, and we lost all of our allied industry, and there's no customers to create an allied industry. And 2 or 3 guys like me is not enough to support an industry. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of, so that's how I kind of see it going. A lot like the high-end bicycle industry, or the low end where they just import something cheap and put their name on it.
There's a lot of that. Certainly.
Oh yeah.
If you could collaborate with any other independent living or historical figure, who would that be and why?
Wow. You should never pick anybody living,
It might blow back at you.
Oh man, I don't know. That's a hard question. I mean, I have some very good friends that are independent watchmakers. I know a lot of the well-known guys in Europe, and that friends with many of them for some of them for decades now. Would I consider doing a collaboration with one of them? Maybe, but I'm not sure it really fits. They're over there, we're over here. We do some of the same things they do. I mean, how would you collaborate that? You know what I mean? I'm not even sure that works. We did a collaboration, 3 collaborations with Martin Guitar with watches. Which is, they make guitars, we make watches. We're both in Pennsylvania. It made a nice fit there. Watchmaker wise, I don't see, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I don't know if it makes sense for us or for somebody else, especially based where we are and where they are. I don't see the appeal there to even the end user, because for one reason or another, they're going to like them or us. You know what I mean? And the crossover probably doesn't work. Historical figures, maybe an older. You look back at some of the historical makers that were here. There were some independent guys, Mr. Dudley. You remember the Dudley Watch Company? And there was some, Potter was originally here before he went to Switzerland. Fasolt, there's a few other independents that were here back in the 1800s. Yeah, sure. They did some cool stuff. Breguet, of course, being the originator of so many things, from the tourbillon to the Breguet hairspring, Breguet numerals, Breguet this, Breguet
hands
that,
and
right?
else.
Yeah, hands. Yeah,
Breguet hands. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't really see anything like that on the horizon, but who knows?
What's the situation like as far as someone coming actually in and seeing your pieces, or if they want to commission custom work? Are you guys open to the public, or kind of an
Well,
appointment?
you have to have a passport, first of all.
Yeah.
No.
Even Canadians now need a passport to go to the U.S.
You know what? We do have we make appointments for clients to come that are interested in watches. And we'll show them watches. We don't give tours because we get requests all the time for tours, and we're only 13 people, a company. I mean, literally, we used to just give tours to somebody just out of the random years ago, but now there's just too many requests. So we do our open house once a year. So we try to direct people, if you want to see how we make watches, try to come to our open house that we do once a year. And now we've partnered with some local entities and created Lancaster Watch Weekend. Lancaster Watch Weekend is us, the Hamilton Boutique, Brent Miller Jewelers, and the Watch and Clock Museum in Columbia. So we all have events the same weekend, and we invite people to come down, and they can do all of these watch things in one weekend. And we time now our open house with that.
That was recently, wasn't it?
So if you want to see how, yes, it was in the end of September.
I thought so.
So if you want to view watches here, it's not a store, it's workshop. You can make an appointment, you can come here, and we can show you watches. But we ask that be someone who's, seriously about considering a purchase.
Yeah.
And if you want to just see what we do and see our workshop, come to our open house.
Cool. So how about some rapid fire questions real quick before we end the podcast?
Okay.
Favorite complication?
Favorite complication? Oh, man, it comes between two. I'm going to say perpetual calendar and minute repeater.
Okay.
And we made one watch that had both of those in it.
Wow. Most underrated vintage American brand?
I mean, honestly, Hamilton. Because, I mean, Hamilton back in the day made world-class stuff. They never, they only made one run of 7 jewel movements. So they knew they didn't want to deal in the lower end of the market. They made so many beautiful railroad watches, unbelievable decoration.
Yeah, decoration is so spectacular.
Really, really good. So I don't think they get the respect of their historic pieces that they should. The Model 21 Marine chronometer is considered the most accurate portable mechanical timepiece ever made.
Wow.
They don't get the respect that they do, and they made everything. Hamilton truly did make everything, even the metal. They had their own metallurgy company, did their own test experiments, made their own metal. So Hamilton was definitely back in the heyday. I'm going to say from the beginning, 1892 to probably 1965, even they stopped making movements in 69. They don't get the respect that they deserve for the contribution that they've made to high grade mechanical watchmaking.
That's a good answer.
Movement that you admire besides your own?
Movement that I admire, modern movement. I like my friend Kerry's doing. Kerry Voigtelainen makes beautiful movements. He does very classic things. Roger Smith, very classic things. So I think we're kind of in line with how we feel about modern technology, modern processes and materials. We like the classic stuff and stick to it. So I think because we kind of have those, we're in line with how we feel about that, and both of them make a very beautiful movement.
Cool. And one last one. What watch do you wish you'd made?
Wow. Now or back in the day?
Anyone. Something somebody else made and you wish you had done it.
I wish I made a split-second chronograph.
Oh, there you go.
Not that yet. One day.
That'll work. And lastly, what's next for RGM? Now, you mentioned a couple of teasers here, and you said you wouldn't say anything, but what can we expect? Projects, movements, complications. What can you tell us? Tease us for the future.
The biggest thing I can't talk about, but I did tell you we're coming out with a perpetual calendar.
Mm-hmm.
I did tell you that there's a new art technique coming out this coming year. It's one that we haven't done yet. Not too many we haven't done yet, so it's coming out. There's always things we're always looking to do. So there's not a whole lot I can really talk about, but something big is coming. The perpetual calendar is coming for sure. Modified Swiss automatic movement that we modify in a very classic calendar. The art piece that's coming is going to be also very reminiscent of things you might see in a museum, but the big project, I alluded a little bit to it earlier, but you probably didn't catch it, but that I can't really talk about, but over the next year, something
Cool
should appear.
I'll make sure everybody keeps an eye on you guys. So on behalf of the two of us, we'd like to thank you for coming on to the show. We've been talking about it for over a year, you and I, trying to get you on. I'm glad we finally made it happen.
Yeah.
If anyone in our audience wants to know more about you, your work, perhaps follow you on social media, where can they find you?
The easiest way is to start with the website, rgmwatches.com. And there is a contact page where you can join our newsletter. And then at the bottom of every page, there's the social media link. So we're very active on Facebook, Instagram, and what I still call Twitter.
And then you got your TikTok dancing show.
We don't do TikTok, no. Don't do that. Instagram is probably our largest audience.
It's ours as well. Even individually, I think Instagram is where most watch collectors spend their time. So once again, thank you, Roland. The Time to Calibrate podcast comes out every 2 weeks and is available wherever you find podcasts. If you have any questions or comments, please send us an email, timetocalibrate@gmail.com. See you all in a couple weeks. In the meantime, T2C out.